Okay.
Take it, Mark.
What's everybody? What's up, everybody, and welcome to the 12th episode of Capitalist Corner. I'm never quite sure if I'm getting the right episode. And I am your host, the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, Mark Pellegrino, along with my co-host and great colleague, Michael Liebowitz, the co-chairman of the American Capitalist Party. And we are here to talk about the news. Little snippets in the news from a capitalist perspective. In other words, a perspective you won't hear anywhere else on earth except for here. So that's why you got to tune in. So you sent me a very interesting article from Reason Magazine about Stephen Miller, and the title of the article from Reason, which is it's a libertarian-esque magazine, you'd say, right?
Yeah.
And the title, so it's quite damning. But the title is justified. It says Stephen Miller egregiously misrepresented a Supreme Court order while Trump nodded along. Now, I mean, this revolves around the travesty of justice that is occurring for this one man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who is apparently a MS-13 gang member who has been deported without trial, without due process, to an El Salvador prison. It was seen early on in the administration that they made a mistake with this guy, which they admitted to doing. And the story has changed all along the thread of this, Michael. I don't know if you've noticed that. At first, the story was, well, we can't do anything about it because he's in another country, basically. He's in El Salvador. There's nothing we can do. And then the judge in the Supreme Court ordered them to expedite this guy's travel back to the United States. So the Supreme Court ordered this. This is the thing that Mr. Miller egregiously represented in a press conference. But they have to bring this guy back to the country according to the Supreme Court, and then update the court as to their progress with respect to returning this guy. Now, what has since happened is a very interesting story. I don't know if you're familiar with this. I don't remember if it was mentioned in the article. But now they've gotten together with the president of El Salvador, who now claims, how can we deport somebody from our own country? He's an El Salvadorian native, so deportation is out of the question. It can't happen. So now that this guy is an El Salvadorian native, he will. It looks like it's going to become harder and harder and harder to get the administration to bring him back to the States to undergo due process to see if he, in fact, is not only an MS-13 gang member, but actually committed crimes while an MS-13 gang member. I think that's very important. Now, of course, Mr. Miller claimed that the court decided 9-0 in their favor, and this was not the case at all. Of course, they decided that he needed to come back to America and he needed to be subject to due process. What do you say about this, Michael? I didn't steal all your thunder. I know you got lots more to say about it.
No. The thunder is still well with me. It has not been stolen.
Good.
Well, first of all, you said something that I'm going to take a little issue with. You said it's going to be harder and harder for them to get him back. I disagree. I think they don't want him back. They're not going to try to get him back. They're playing games, and so is this asshole from El Salvador. So that's what's actually going on. The degree to which these people will play those kind of games is utterly appalling, and the degree to which his followers are willing to abide that, cheer it, support it is equally disgusting. And then we have the dynamic where there's the complete lack of concern for the truth. It's just, we're going to lie. We don't care about lying because we know that the mainstream sources of information have lost credibility. So therefore, anybody who calls us on our BS, we just say, establishment, mainstream media, you're lying. That's the trick. That's how grifters of all stripes are now getting away with this. This is really goes to the dynamic that Douglas Murray attempted to address, although I don't think he did very well. And it's scary to me. It's a very deep epistemological problem. Because any argument you get into, it ends up with, oh, well, what's your source? This and that. That's why when I had the debate with the guy the other day on Trump, there were so many other things I could have brought up. But then you just end up arguing, oh, no, that's not true. No, the election was stolen. You didn't see Dinesh D'Souza. You know what I mean? So I just try to limit it to what came out of Trump's mouth. This is very, very scary to me. That to me is the scariest part of the whole thing, is the degree to which these people lie and how much they're supported, and all they come out with is TDS. I think this is so dangerous, and they come back, do you have TDS? TDS. It's such a childish thing to say. It's the saying of a man without arguments. I just tell them, debate. I'll live stream it. Just debate me. A woman told me this morning, TDS has rotted your mind. I told her, debate me. We'll see whose mind is rotted. And I do that because I really believe that this dynamic needs to be destroyed. This idea that Donald Trump is a good person and the whole world is just against him needs to be annihilated. He's not a capitalist. He's not a good person. He's not an objectivist hero. Anybody that thinks he is, you're either a liar or you're just ignorant, in which case, listen to the facts and then you'll change your mind.
Yeah, and he's not a messianic figure as well. He's not ordained by God to lead the nation because he slipped a bullet by a quarter of an inch. None of that means that he's supposed to be here, supposed to be leading us, and that everything he does has a mandate from God, even less so there. Yeah, I mean, we can't stress enough on this channel how important due process is to maintaining the rights and liberties of citizens and non-citizens alike. Now, you may think because I say non-citizens, I'm somehow breaking with American policy. Well, in essence, I am, because I think all human beings that come under the umbrella of the United States government deserve the rights and privileges. Not necessarily privileges. They can't necessarily vote. There are some things they cannot do, but they certainly deserve to have their individual rights protected. And due process is one of the ways in which we do that. And this administration seems hell-bent on denying due process. Now, Trump said something really scary in an interview when he was asked about the possibility of deporting actual criminal citizens. He said, yes, people who, chronically hurt people or break things, this is something to be considered. Now, the fact that he's even considering that possibility should run chills down everybody's spines, even those people who have Trump derangement syndrome on the right, because everything Yaron Brooks says is sort of coming true. I mean, this guy has no respect for the Constitution, no respect for the separation of powers. He's an egomaniacal freak who wants his way or nothing, and he's willing to impose it on anybody who gets in his way. Now, you could be that next person, folks. Not just because they seem to be attacking gang members and foreign nationals here in the United States and deporting them. It doesn't mean with his entertaining citizens that you might not come on that criminal roster simply for dissenting against what the administration is doing. I hate the fact that I agree with the left on this. I know the left is using this to score political points, and the last person they really care about is Mr. Garcia. But we care about due process. And
Mark, I just think that is so the wrong way to look at things. Like, I hate to agree with the left. All I want to do is look at reality and see what's true. Now, you made a point, and I'm going to tie a couple points together with somebody in the comments. So Race Jacobson says, I don't have the patience to debate with unreasonable people, and I don't owe my reasonability to people who will spit in my face for using reason. You're absolutely correct. I don't want to debate Trumpsters for them. I don't owe it to them. I want to do it to expose them. I want to do it to bring that into light, that they're just irrational, emotionalists, mind-numbed zombies. That's my goal. And I don't care if they know it or not, because I believe it's not even a difficult thing to do. But the principle that Race was talking about there, where he says he doesn't owe it to them, and as I pointed out, I won't do it for them. The idea that because this guy is a criminal, right? Okay, he's a horrible person. I don't know whether he is or not. I don't know anything about him. I know it hasn't been proven in a court of law, right? You don't give him due process for him. It's similar to when I would talk to people about rehabilitating criminals when I was in prison, and they would say to me, we don't owe it to the criminals to rehabilitate them. Of course you don't. But you have a question on your hands. Do you want to have a safe society or not? And what is going to get you there? And in this case, do you want to have a just society or not? And allowing presidents or anyone to arbitrarily deport people by claiming there's something is not how you get to a just society. It's not about the individual specifically involved, not necessarily. I mean, obviously, especially if it's completely unjust and he's innocent, it is. But in the long run, it's about the health of our republic. It's about establishing the rule of law. And the rule of law, importantly, not just for the sake of rule of law, but for the sake of upholding individual rights.
Yeah, when we talk about rational egoism, we're talking about a human being who looks at their rational best interests over the long term of their lives. So there's never a decision in your life that doesn't impact you over a long term. That it should be, mulled over reasonably. I remember Rand saying, "Don't go with what you feel, go with what you think." That is completely countercultural, but standing for due process is the rational thing to do, irrespective of what we think of the people involved, the people who are the quote unquote criminals. Due process is a foundation, a necessary foundation of civilization. It is the means by which we subordinate might to right. It is literally the thing that protects our liberties. You cannot give it up under any circumstances whatsoever. I remember a while back, Mike, you said something like, "I can't lie once." And I thought that was a very profound thing that affected me forever and ever and ever. And it's not just you who can't lie once. It's me that can't lie once. It's everybody who can't lie once, because the reason honesty is one of the 7 virtues of objectivism is because it is about a relationship to reality, and your relationship to your epistemic relationship to reality is vital to your life. You have to be tuned into what is. You can't deny, you can't evade. Evasion is one of the greatest sins. We see it happening here with Trump derangement syndrome on the right. They're evading the fact that their man is unhinged and using the law in the same way many leftists have used to attack an enemy, to attack a scapegoat, to pull the entire country's attention to something that he claims is a common good, when it's really undermining the common good by destroying the foundations upon which liberty is made. Equal to Reality says something here that I found a little interesting. Mike, I don't know if you'll find this interesting. For once, I am glad I am a British citizen who lives in the UK. I don't know, man. The UK seems pretty scary to me, brother. They don't have protections. They'll knock on your door if you say something bad on Twitter. They might arrest you, fine you. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the UK, including a cultural saturation and rabid anti-Semitism that makes me feel like the place is not a safe place for some people to live, and that they're losing touch with that stuff that made them unique, that made them the mother of the greatest country in the world. They're losing touch with their common law sensibility, their sense of an Englishman's rights. All of these things are going by the wayside for political correctness. So I wouldn't want to live there, and it's expensive, and they have the NHS, which is a disaster.
Oh, touche, Equal to Reality.
Almost, I will not. What does it say?
He said, "At least I will not be deported to El Salvador."
Well, just give them time, my friend. Just give them time. You'll be deported to Devil's Island.
So, and there's a big problem that we have. Brian Kaplan, the libertarian anarchist economics professor, who was a very, very bright guy, he made a post today, and he said, "Are there any Democrats that have explicitly said they're for free trade?" And I don't think so. And that gets to a very big problem, is there's no opposition to Donald Trump based on individual rights, free trade, capitalism. The Democrats are good at criticizing him. But then their criticisms get mixed in with, we want money, we want free healthcare, we want these programs. So they're not a good opposition, even if they had the guts to fight him with it, which it doesn't seem they currently do. So it's a very perilous situation where you have this guy in office who his supporters are loyal to a fault. The people he surrounded him with will do whatever he wants. And the opposition is both too afraid to fight him and have no principles by which to fight him.
Well, I sort of disagree with you there. I'm gonna throw out a little devil's advocacy here.
Okay.
I think the left is the only principled side in this argument. I think that's why they're so tenacious and bold. I mean, one of their representatives.
Oh, hold on, Mark. I'm not saying they have no principles. I mean, if I said that, I misspoke. What I'm saying is they don't have the correct principles to fight.
That's indeed true. So
that's what I'm saying. If I said they have no principles, I apologize. They do have some principles.
For the wrong things for sure, but they go for them with the passion of a person who's convinced that their principles are the proper ones. Now, our job is to convince them or people adjacent to them that those principles are actually extremely bad. Now, of course, they swallowed the Kool-Aid of the Second Bill of Rights by
Roosevelt,
which entitled people to a remunerative job, to freedom from want, to a house. All of these things now that have to be produced by the labor of others have become rights in their mind, as Rand would call it, the inflation of rights, which essentially makes rights meaningless. But they've fallen for it, and that's the principle, that the altruist principle that we should be our brother's keeper, is what they pursue. So even though they're on the right side of Mr. Garcia's case, they're probably on it for the wrong reasons. But certainly, and they are very vocal about what they're doing. But look, right now the right controls the narrative. The nationalist right is controlling the narrative, so they're able to paint these guys as lunatics who are more interested in protecting foreign national criminals than they are in defending the rights of American citizens. Well, defending due process is defending the rights of American citizens. Defending due process is defending what makes this country the greatest country on earth. There was something that Greg Lewis said up there that I sort of wanted to. He said something that just is. What does he say? You see his comments up there. Setting aside due process is part of the above. He's talking about lawfare and the way in which the system is using. Your system is a legal civil war where men gang up on one another and struggle for possession of the law, in which they then use as a club over rivals till another gang wrests it from. Now, this is exactly what spoils system democracy is. When you presume that everything is up for vote, including rights, and that we have this vast inflated system of what rights are. Rights are claims to things, to stuff that society owes you. Well, then it is a matter of time of who gets in power and who's able to use the power of government to claim those rights for their particular group. Ayn Rand talked about the regulatory state as a type of civil war, because it is groups fighting for a piece of the federal pie, for a piece of your tax dollars, for that little extra legal privilege that puts them on top, while at the same time repressing you, because of course they have to use your resources in order to do that. This is a spoils system democracy we live in. There's no question about it. And right now, Trump is trying to effect, through his populism, a change, and a change of course. And he's doing it rather effectively, because I don't know that like you think, Michael, I don't think the left is capable of controlling the narrative at this point. As much as they're going to fight, as much as they're going to rally support, and they are. Bernie Sanders is out there, AOC is out there, people that Americans shouldn't take seriously, but they're the loudest, most consistent voices for that side. They're out there trying to stir up as much of an adversarial, as much of an opposition as they possibly can. What say you?
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really have anything to add. I'm sorry.
So, there was a story a little while back about, what was that? Representative Crockett. Do you know this woman, Representative Crockett?
No, where is she from?
Where is she from? Is she from? Somebody tell me where she's from, because I'm forgetting. I'm having a brain fart right now. I'm forgetting where she's from. But she's one of the more outspoken members, sort of a new member of the squad. Says really, really stupid things, but gets lots of publicity. Anyway, a few weeks ago, there was an article about her in the Post and how she's benefited massively from these political action committees that have funded her. Political action committees, of course, that had interests in certain products and industries that were trying to sway her. They gave her trips, and they gave her like $500,000 in gifts and money. This was something she campaigned against, by the way, against her predator, against her competitor, who had taken over $100,000 in money from these same organizations to advance his career. Meanwhile, she took 5 times more. These politicians benefiting from insider status or from the power that they're going to wield in the regulatory state really, really scares me. And the other story that you sent me was about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because
yes, I do.
It's Hillary Clinton-esque. Right?
Very.
It talks about Hillary Clinton and Nancy
Yes.
Pelosi. Let's hear
So
about
Marjorie Taylor Greene invested a considerable amount of money in the stock market when the market was cratering due to the tariffs and before Trump suspended them. So, and I guess there was a period where he went on Truth Social and said, yes, you should. He didn't say yes. He said, you should. Everybody should be investing right now. It's a great time to invest. But part of the investment she made was before that, part was after. It stinks of corruption, right? She's one of the biggest devoted followers of Trump. She makes this investment. She's a member of Congress. Now, here's the thing. And this goes, we kind of talked about this issue yesterday. Maybe everybody knows you buy low, sell high. Maybe she just bought at the right time. Maybe her, whoever does her investment saw that the market was down, said it can't stay down forever. Now's a good time to buy. That could have happened. It also could have happened that Trump told her ahead of time because she's such a big supporter of his. I don't know. I do know that when you have a president who has the power to raise and lower taxes at whim, this is going to be a problem. As long as you have a government that is allowed to intervene in economic issues, to regulate certain companies, deregulate other companies, tax companies, untaxed companies, you're going to have this problem. It's the similar thing with what's going on with Harvard right now. They've been getting subsidies for years. Then the president comes along and says, now you're going to do things my way or you don't get the subsidies. If you didn't have them getting subsidized to begin with, you don't end up with this issue.
Absolutely. Now, Nancy Pelosi is famous for, being on committees that enable her to have insider information on which way finances will go for many companies, and I guess passing that information on to her husband, or so we think, because she's worth multi-millions of dollars and has made some investments that would make Warren Buffett squirm in his seat because they're so erudite and so prescient, and we can tell just by looking at Nancy that she doesn't have enough brain cells to be able to do that, but she certainly has the brain cells of a reptile to know when to pass and when to go based on the committees in Washington. And also, there's a famous case of Hillary Clinton and cattle futures, selling short cattle futures and making $100,000 on a $10,000 investment, which is next to impossible. So clearly she had insider information. All of these people get insider information, and that's why they're trying to pass laws that make it difficult, if not impossible, for Congress people, especially Congress people who know what's going on in the financial world and what laws they're about to pass, to not be able to invest. Now, of course, that is a pragmatic solution to a systemic problem. The real issue will be to separate politics from economics by way of a constitutional amendment for the same reasons that we separate church and state. And in that way, these politicians are immediately impotent. They can no longer affect the course of any business. They can't pass a law or regulation that will strangle some business and privilege others, and also enrich themselves in the process, because those businesses are going to want to come in and influence peddle. So let's just assume Marjorie Taylor Greene probably did have the ear of Trump. He respects her a great deal because she is a diehard. I mean, she's like the Herman Hesse of this organization. Sorry to make a Nazi reference, but
it's okay. There are a lot of them,
and she's
there are a lot of them. Yes,
she's one of them. She's
Laura Loomer, Lauren Boebert. There's quite a few that just no matter what he does, It's right.
And
You know,
not hard.
just as an aside, Mark,
Go ahead.
you know, could you live with yourself? Like I couldn't,
No.
if I couldn't have that kind of devotion to anybody. Like I would just feel so yucky inside. It's
I could be.
so gross.
Well, here you have to preface that because you could be devoted to somebody who has virtue, who's very virtuous. But wait a minute, maybe you can't. But I can be devoted to somebody who has virtue. But
Oh,
my
you could be so devoted, Mark, that you would defend that person no matter what.
No,
I mean,
no,
people
no,
are that. Well,
no.
that's the problem because
It's
people are fallible, right? So even if I'm completely virtuous, I'm going to screw up. I'm going to be wrong. I'm going to make mistakes.
absolutely.
And
And
like,
knowing that you're going to come clean with your mistakes, and that
sure,
would be the thing that I will be devoted to. And if you didn't come
yeah,
clean with your mistakes, then that shows me something about your value system that isn't consistent, and would probably make me come clean about the mistakes that you've made. And if you still refuse to acknowledge that, that would probably end in a split because we clearly don't share the same values. So I'm devoted to people who have the same values as me. I'm free to criticize them if I think they've fallen off. They're free to criticize me. Rand said something very, I think, important that should become the maxim for our culture. Judge and be prepared to be judged. Now we have the opposite. Don't judge people. That's a terrible thing. Judgment is awful. Judge lest ye be judged. Strikes fear in the hearts of everybody. Don't, he who lives in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Yeah, well, don't live in the glass house. Actually back up your virtues. Live by your virtues. It doesn't mean you're going to be infallible, but it does mean that you are going to have perfect integrity.
yes,
And when you make that mistake and somebody sets you on the right path, it's not the end of the world, man. It's
no,
good.
yeah,
Healthy critiques actually set you on the right path. You should be grateful for them. I met Michael. I remember you critiqued me on something a while back, and you were
I don't believe I would ever do such a thing, Mark. I think you're just making that up.
Yeah, but when you did it, you were like, I'm so surprised you really take criticism well. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's good. It's good
Yes.
criticism. It's healthy for me to take that information in. If I don't take it in, I'm only hurting myself. And why defend myself against something that makes me better? So I'm chronically for taking in information from people whose opinions I think are spot on, who nail me for something that I'm doing wrong. And pretty much everybody who talks to me on social media in a real way knows that about me. If I've done something that's really off, I'll apologize for going really off, and I'll do my best to never do that thing again. Of course, I did say I was going to stop using the C word. I've started using it again because, okay, there's no because. There really isn't any because.
That's funny because I was just telling my girlfriend, I think maybe this morning or yesterday, I really want to stop swearing.
Yeah.
I have stopped in the past, but then, what ends up happening is I allow it back in for moments when I think it's appropriate, like if I'm angry. But I've been swearing as long as I could talk. I mean, 3-4 years old. So it just comes right back in and it becomes habitual. The essay you're referencing is How to Live a Rational Life in an Irrational Society. It's in The Virtue of Selfishness. It's one of my favorite Rand essays of all time. Because the thing is, people have a real hard time with this concept of being judged. But it's not just people that you have to judge, right? You have to judge yourself. You have to judge your own actions. You have to judge the people that you're going to engage in. You have to judge the foods that you eat, the roads you're going to drive on. Judgment is essential. But because of the insecurities of people, it becomes, you shouldn't judge people.
Also, because of the fallibility of people. So people have an erroneous perspective of what it is to be morally perfect. And so they define it outside the nature of what they're trying to define, right? So you're not perfect as an individual because you're infallible. So you can't claim moral perfection. So since you can't claim moral perfection, how in the heck can you criticize somebody else? You're looking at the comments. I noticed. I was looking at the comments too. There was something I wanted to address. Maybe you want to address a different thing.
Real quickly, it was not Michael that said Herman Hesse, Teresa. It was Mark that said Herman Hesse. And she says you must have meant Rudolf Hess, because Herman Hesse was a wonderful writer and not a Nazi.
Herman Hesse wrote Steppenwolf.
Yes, Rudolf Hess was the guy who flew into Britain during the war on his own to try to make a treaty with the Brits.
Buddhists and Nazis, they
But there was another Rudolf Hess also, but it was spelled differently, who I think was a gatekeeper, some such thing at a guard at one of the concentration camps. I think Auschwitz, but I'm not positive. But back to the judgment thing real quickly. It's just, yes, it's like, I don't give a damn, what is going on in your head about me. I just don't. I mean, I care how you're going to treat me, because I care about your views, because I respect you. And because if you have a viewpoint, I'll listen, because it might be correct and I might change my, whatever, my actions, my behavior. But just about what's going on in somebody's head, I don't care. But it really terrifies some people that somebody else is going to judge them, as if my thoughts have the power to just crush somebody, which of course they do not. My capacity for judgment is just my means of navigating reality. I have to judge people. Should I not distinguish between a guy that's going to hold the door for me when I'm going into, the restaurant, and the guy who's going to pick my pocket when I'm going into the restaurant? I have to make these judgments. But that, whatever. I probably went on too long about this. I'm passionate about it. It's a great essay.
It's a great essay, but yeah, your life,
and a great principle.
Your life depends on your ability to discriminate bad from good. It depends upon it, and that discrimination is rational, that it makes sense, that it works in your long-term interests as a human being. Bonnie Bertrand said, "Is it possible to get rid of the Commerce Clause?" Now, the original intent of the Commerce Clause, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, was to look at the time of the Confederation of States. The states were more or less in economic war with each other, and they were hammering tariffs against rival states, and they were protectionistic, and they couldn't pay their debts, and it just became a financial free-for-all. And the Commerce Clause was intended to bring unity to that. In other words, it was supposed to knock out those kinds of regulations and internal tariffs so that there could be free trade between the states. It also took the debt on nationally, but the Commerce Clause was supposed to be a deregulator. Now, provided they use that power to keep tariffs down and out, even internationally, I think that the Commerce Clause should stay if it's used in its proper, if it's used properly. But what do you think? Is it possible to get back to that old notion of what?
I think you're right in your assessment of why we have the Commerce Clause. In order to get rid of the Commerce Clause would require a constitutional amendment. You couldn't just abolish it by legislation because it's in the Constitution. But it's also an issue, and it's one of these issues where I actually disagree with Ayn Rand. Because in Atlas Shrugged, she has Judge, what was it, Narragansett, I believe his name was, in Atlas Shrugged, was the judge, writing new amendments to the Constitution. I am not a believer that the words in the Constitution mean much beyond what the population gives to them. If you could get rid of the Commerce Clause today, the philosophical underpinnings of our society would come up with another justification to do what they've justified with the Commerce Clause. What they've justified with the Commerce Clause was unjust, and it wasn't rational, and it wasn't based in the text or the facts, but they did it anyway. And you could get rid of that, and you could replace it with something else, and they would just come up with another reason to do what they want, because the people let them get away with it. Until we have a philosophical revolution, I mean, I don't know how else to put it. Until we have that, what's in the Constitution isn't really going to matter. We really need to reestablish ourselves as a individual rights-based society that values individual rights, individualism, capitalism, trade. Until we do that, I don't think it's relevant whether the Commerce Clause is there or not.
Yeah, and this is why Walter Williams' book, The People's Contempt for the Constitution, is so necessary for people to read, because we describe this problem, or not us particularly, but most people think the problem is of the political class growing. But the political class grows because the people want it to grow. They've had an appetite now for regulation and what they think is the safety that the government safety net provides them. Of course, it doesn't. It's taking away their liberties while it's giving them these privileges and asserting the power to do that, which is, I think, more dangerous than anything. Now, I thought Rand was more about weeding out the contradictions of the Constitution as opposed to writing new amendments. So, you know, you have the necessary and proper clause, which enables the government to expand its powers. I think we need to get rid of the implied powers concept that Hamilton birthed into this country, and weed out the contradictions of the Constitution, so that yes, it's dependent upon the will of the people and the mindset of the people and the philosophy of the people, how deeply, how closely they attend to the Constitution. But we can make it harder for the people to breach the Constitution, and for their political representatives to breach the Constitution, by taking all the contradictions out of it that enable.
Oh yeah, I agree with you, Mark. If I came off as something, then that's my fault. I'm not saying we should not change anything in the Constitution. What I'm saying is changing things in the Constitution would be irrelevant if society is not going to uphold it. But even if you do have rational people, you still need guidelines by which to go. And in that case, you do want non-contradictory guidelines in place, which is what the Constitution would be.
So with the American Capitalist Party, we would have to have legal philosophers on this, really combing through the Constitution and really sorting out how to make that wording ironclad so that no political opposition, no statist could reach in there and grab more power for himself under any circumstances whatsoever, including an emergency.
You know, if it would really be nice if only I knew a legal philosopher out there who's an objectivist and who's very smart and who I went to visit in San Diego. If I knew such a guy, that would be great.
If only knew. Now, was him the reason there was a 5.2 earthquake over there?
I don't know. He was just posting over here a little while ago, but I think he's left. So I don't know if he caused the earthquake. Maybe this was to establish an alibi. maybe that's why he got on here. It was just to establish an alibi. We're talking, of course, about the wonderful James Stevens Valiant, who is the legal philosopher, religious philosopher, brilliant man all around. That guy, I'll tell you, there's very rarely a question I ask that he doesn't know the answer. It's totally nuts. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
Like who was the great grandson of, Richard II? And he's like, oh, it was this guy, but he married her. And it's like, wow, dude. Oh, my Lord.
Quite the brain. And let's hope we can convince him to be a sort of counsel for.
That'd be great.
We're definitely trying in our own way to get James' input on constitutional matters for the American Capitalist Party, because I think that will put us head and shoulders above. We're already head and shoulders above the competition.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to say this. I don't know if I'm going to say it to him, but I'll say it here. Jim is, I think, the hardest debate opponent I've ever had in my life. I really do. He's tough. Many times.
Oh, okay.
Many times. Only once or twice on air in a podcast episode of The Rational Egoist. We debated constitutional interpretation, and we debated the moral quality of Howard Rourke's action of basically enabling Peter Keating. So those were just two of the arguments that we had on, that were out for everybody. But we've had arguments. Like one time I'm like, Jim, it's 2 a.m. My roommates are in the room next door, and Jim's animated and loud, and I'm like, I can't keep doing it, I gotta go. Great discussions, but I mean, the main point there is, of course, that we can have disagreements with smart people, with friends, with people that we respect. That type of thing should be encouraged, because ultimately, if we're honest, we learn from it.
Indeed. Robert Nacier says something, of course, brilliant, which is not unusual for Robert. He says, telling people not to judge means telling people not to see, not to think. That's absolutely true. And I think if people can wrap their minds around that more, we'll bring more people to our side, which is judge and be prepared to judge. Now, Race says something. Now, Race submitted a debt action plan. I haven't read it yet. Sorry, Race. I've been busy, but I am definitely going to get to it. It's not that long, so it shouldn't take me too long to get through it. But he says, we also need an economist who can help us with the debt action plan. because he's approaching the limits of his knowledge and what could be done about the national debt. And indeed, I think most economists are. And I don't think any solutions at this point, from my limited knowledge too. I mean, I've read most of the books that you've read, Michael, but still, it seems to me that there's no pretty way out of the.
I don't think so. I mean, I'm not an economist, but 38 or 37 trillion dollars. When I read years ago, I read Ted Cruz's book, A Time for Truth. This was before Trump was ever elected president. And, at that time, I don't know, the debt was like 25 trillion, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, but roughly 25 trillion. And he had a plan that I thought was very good. And that was to sell off federal lands and use the proceeds to pay down the debt. And I thought that was a great idea. I don't know all the inner workings of the logistics of how to do that, but I do think that it's possible. But as the debt grows bigger and bigger, I mean, it's not as if we've plateaued with the debt and now we can work on paying it off. These people just keep growing it. And it doesn't matter who's in office, who's in Congress, who's in the Senate, House, presidency, whatever. Doesn't make a difference. This thing just keeps growing. It's like on automatic.
Well, you're right. It is on automatic, and the unpleasant truth. Now, that is one of the great solutions I think they should do, is sell federal land to developers, of course. Possibly that even means the national park to private developers too, as well, who could probably take care of the region better than the National Forest Service has. But the real problem is the ugly thing that they won't wrap their heads around, and that they still are not even entertaining, is cutting and eliminating the welfare state in all its iterations. I mean, literally this year, they should start cutting it by 15%. But the political outcry amongst even right wingers would be so intense, they can't do it. They've all swallowed the altruist Kool-Aid. So if you noticed, every time they talk about, say, Doge is now bragging about cutting $150 billion when they were trying to go for $1 trillion. And of course, the political outcry was so intense, not only from the left, but from the right as well. So everybody's so worried about getting their piece of the pie taken away from them that Trump went to Elon. He said, let's not use a chainsaw. Let's use a scalpel. Well, they used a scalpel, and now it's only $150 billion, which is...
and that's contested, right? That's even contested.
That's contested. That's even more terrible. But that's how many hours of government operation? I mean, we're talking about maybe a day of government has been cut from 365 days.
From the much vaunted Doge. I was told by libertarians and MAGA alike how, you're an idiot. You don't trust Elon. Elon's a brilliant businessman. You should be in favor of this, and yada, 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 yada. And my answer was, I've seen this movie before. We've seen this
movie before. And let's remember, Doge is about government efficiency, an oxymoron, which will never happen, no matter how many people they fire. And it's not about cutting government entitlements because nobody is entitled to them. That's the moral fact that these people have to get their minds around. And until they start reaching into these entitlements, the debt will continue to rise until it is untenable. They're saying by 2055, if we continue on the course we're going on now, the debt will be 211% of our GDP. 211%. Think about that, folks. 211% of the totality of what we produce. That is insanity.
Yes.
And yet, nobody has the political will to save us from this, because they're only thinking of the next election cycle, and they all know in the next election cycle they won't likely be there for the catastrophe. So let's hope it's not a capitalist, the American capitalist in there, who has to impose these rather draconian measures in order to save the country and the free world essentially from collapse. Who gets in there and gets the blame for...
I just want to give you fair warning. We got a little bit more than 10 minutes left, and today is your day for the capitalist thought of the day.
Mhm.
So let it start percolating in there, so when we get there, you don't try to put it off on me, because I'm getting the sense like I'm doing it every day. And so I just want to make sure that it's
Boy,
equitable. It's an
I could have.
equitable distribution.
Boy, oh boy, listen to this. So I did I did say you do it yesterday because I did it on Friday. Now you had a special show on Monday. So I know it feels like I'm sloughing it off on you, but I don't think I am. And until we have objective proof of this from the audience, I'm not going to believe it.
Well, it might just be fake news. I don't know if the audience is credible if they weigh in. I need the source. Once I find the source that agrees with me, we'll know we have a reliable source.
Now you're talking like Dave Smith. I love that. Ray says something good again here. Cutting regulation, deregulation, that could reduce the cost of living, could naturally reduce the welfare state. Deregulation will help for sure, but it's got to be draconian deregulation. It's got to be deregulation on a scale that the American people don't seem willing to deal with. And the cuts to Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, these things have to be deep. We're talking at least 15%. That's some of what I've heard. I may have even heard 25% initially, in order to bring down inflation. I mean, we're in a serious bind right now. And the political class is not reacting to it because they're afraid. They're afraid because they've gotten everybody addicted to this political system that does things for them. And now people are accustomed to getting something for nothing. And when they get nothing now, and are left to their own devices, they're going to have political hell to pay, which, you know what, is good. They should be voted out for their profligate spending. They should be voted out for not bearing the fiduciary responsibility of the people and for protecting the Constitution of the United States and for feeding themselves at the public trough. Screw these people. Listen to this. Is something else Robert Nacier said. So I'm only just getting. Oh, it goes up here a little bit.
There's a whole stream. You got to.
It's a whole thing. A capitalist thought from Ayn Rand. Oh, now Robert Nacier just stole my thunder. Does this mean that?
Oh, no. You can read it. I'm all for reading it and giving Robert and Ayn Rand credit, but you're not getting out of this.
I can't adopt it for myself.
No, you are not Lucifer in real life. You cannot be that slippery.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. Lucifer wasn't very slippery either. The Winchesters always got him. So, the capitalist thought from Ayn Rand, this is a quote: capitalism has been called a system of greed, yet it is the system that raised the standard of living of its poorest citizens to heights no collective system has ever begun to equal and no tribal gang can conceive of. Capitalism has been called cruel, yet it brought such hope, progress, and general goodwill that the young people of today who have not seen it find it hard to believe. That is amazing, and we are not going to get any better than that, Robert. So I'm stealing that and using. I'm just joking. I'm not going to steal it. I have my own capitalist thought. But that is great, and this is the way that people need to start looking at capitalism from now on. Now, this is one of the reasons I feel it's so imperative to fight these intellectual adolescents called communists and the American Communist Party online, because they're trying to not only rebrand themselves as a party of patriotism, and they're now trying to claim that communism is compatible with Americanism. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because
they're very weird brand of communist, because
it's a weird brand of communism, but they're getting a little bit of play, of course, and of course it's with statist countries and Arab countries that are building up their numbers, but nonetheless they look like they're having more of an influence than they actually do.
I don't know.
Like patriotism and communism go hand in hand.
They don't, of course. I mean, communism is the antithesis of the American experiment. I don't know. It's hard for me to gauge how much influence people are having, because the only thing I can gauge it by is what inundates my feed. And so it's hard for me to know what's actually going on. Now, those people in my feed, they have a lot of traction. A lot of people comment on them because I follow them on purpose because I want to see what they're up to. But no, the very idea of publicly owned property where the government owns everything or the people, own everything. No, that obviously is not the American experiment. We're a country of individual rights, which they don't believe in at all. They also have this weird, we believe in determinism, but we have to advocate for it thing going on. I don't know. They're commies, but they claim to be right-wing communists. They're MAGA communists. I don't know. It's all very strange to me. It's incoherent. I read one of the books they recommended to me, and it was just garbage, nonsense, completely, irrational and illogical.
Yeah, they're definitely trying to have their cake and eat it too. They claim to like principles, but then when you talk about principles, they're like, "What is this morality? What is this principle stuff? We're talking real politics."
Right. Well, what they did, there was this switch where we say, "What is the moral basis of your viewpoint?" They then say, "Oh, who are you to talk about morality because you did this or this is?" It's got nothing to do with it. I could be the biggest scumbag on the planet. That doesn't change what the moral arguments are for capitalism and communism, respectfully.
Indeed, but they're even revising history. Mao was a great man. Stalin, they are now saying, was a great.
He's great. Yeah, they've done them both. They're both wonderful people, and we've just been brainwashed. Well, they're benefiting. They're part of this new info ecosystem where nothing you've ever learned is true. And this is the real truth. They've got a historian who will back them up. He's not a historian. He's an English professor, but they go to him. Grover Fur. Okay. But I mean, the problem is you look up Grover Fur and it says this guy is not credible, but then they just say, oh, well, who's saying he's not credible? It's the same thing with virtually any policy, historical fact, whatever. Churchill is the bad guy of World War II. I can prove it. I have this guy. Oh, and if you disagree, you're trusting the experts. You're trusting the elites. You know what I mean? The establishment. And it's a very neat trick that's going on. We really need to get some credible sources, and we need to combat these people, right, left, middle, wherever they are. I'm not here to defend the elites, or anybody else, depending on what you mean by elite. One of these terms is just thrown around, but I am going to defend the idea that we need to have good info systems. We need to have people that are trustworthy, that can bring us good economic information, historical information, just like I need a good mechanic, right? I can't just bring my car to some random guy on the street and pay him to fix my car. I have to go to someone who knows what he's doing.
Right. But now, I had an argument recently with one of these jerk-offs where I said the Khmer Rouge moved people out of the cities and into the rural areas as a point of their version of communism. They were trying to create their version of an agrarian society which they thought was the utopia. He said, no, they were at war. I said, no, this happened after war. This was a part of their policy. This movement of people, this expropriation of their property in the city. He said, show me. So I gave him a Post article. I gave him a paper from the Brookings Institute. I gave him a bunch of academic studies. Well, this isn't primary source material. I'm like, what do you want? You want something from the Diary of Pol Pot? Is that what you think will be enough to satisfy you? How many papers do I have to send you that this was an actual policy of the communists in Cambodia? To split the population like this and to compel an agrarian society on people, they still wouldn't buy it. And it's like, so they change and shift their arguments in order to avoid the losses that they get every time they confront us. No, there's no amount of evidence that we could give, no amount of logic or reasoning that we could hit them with that actually matters. They're getting too much play and too much popularity from pushing their perspective. I've even asked this guy who said, he's a patriot and he's a communist. I said, how is Americanism and communism, how are they sympathetic to each other? How are they compatible in any way? What's Americanism? And it's funny you should ask that. There's a book by Jonathan Hoenig sitting here, but Yeah, they don't even know what Americanism means, and they actually consider themselves patriots. And that's the way they're coming at it now. If you want to be a patriot, if you really want to preserve America, they're trying to pass themselves on as family people. Families, just like the religious right, families are now the basic unit of society for the communists. It's a big lie. It's a big lie. And they're doing it just so they can try to accrue power. But it'll go.
Robert Nasser asks or says it's always a good question to ask early in a conversation. Are you open to reason on this? What would it take for you to reconsider your opinion on this matter? I think he's right. I mean, there's people. I asked a religious friend, a Muslim friend of mine, one time, what would it take for you to stop being Muslim? What evidence would have to be presented for you to not believe that? And he said, "There's nothing."
Wow.
Okay, what can you do?
Wow.
What can you do? I'll tell you what you can do. You can give the capitalist thought for the day.
Yes, I can. All right. I think this is sort of the theme of the day. What we're seeing in our country today, which frightens me more than anything, is the elimination of due process. And it's easy to take principles like due process that are the foundation stone of a free society, and to get rid of them when you are focused on the unpopular, the obnoxious, the people that, generally the general population would find no problem with eliminating. And therein lies the rub, because principles matter and your freedom lives in principles. I remember Ayn Rand saying something to the extent of, the government should be an automaton, like a robot. It should only be able to do, what it's explicitly told to do. And it's the people who should be free. And of course, that is now changing. It's the people who are becoming robots and the government who's free to do anything. And part of the reason that that's happening is because we've lost touch with principles. Principles are a sum of knowledge. Don't knock them. It's pragmatism is the negation of principles. It's throwing out principles and claiming that everything you meet in the world is a discrete phenomenon that needs to be judged on its own. But that's not the case. These overarching principles have been tried and true, rationally acquired. Due process is a principle of governance that protects liberty. It hobbles the powerful, the politically powerful, and forces them to subordinate their power to a rational process. That is what maintains your freedom. So always stick to principles. They matter. They are going to be what saves this republic at some point. And when you see somebody who's wielding the cudgel of pragmatism, run like hell. And that is Donald Trump and his administration. All right,
that was great. That was great. I have nothing to add. That was fantastic.
What?
That was fantastic.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so I think that's it for the day. So
that's it for the day, but we will be back tomorrow.
Yes, we will be back tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat place. Come visit us. Go follow Michael. Go listen to The Rational Egoist. And if you haven't downloaded his debates with people, you should download them. You'll become smarter doing it. Follow me on Mark R. Pellegrino, the checkmark guy, and just watch me use the C word over and over again. I'll try to get over that. I promise. I swear. And then follow Michael too on Twitter for a much more civil and organized debate with bad people. And tune in here and let's grow this audience, folks. Tell your friends about us, because this word needs to get out there to the world. Tell your Trumpster friends, tell your Democrat friends, tell your people on the fence, the moderates, the centrists, that there's a new voice out here, a new voice that really can affect change in the world. And it's right here. It's starting here. This is the birth spot of it right here. This is the new Philadelphia. Okay.
Nice.
So let's get on this. And remember, folks, to always check your premises. We'll see you tomorrow.